Hi, my name is Braylon Lear, and this presentation will discuss neuroticism more in depth. So, as you all know, earlier this semester we talked about or read about Karen Horney and her neurotic needs theory. And so, while reading that chapter, I found it really interesting. So, I decided to dig a little bit more into neuroticism and kind of like how it's caused and stuff like that. So, a neurotic person basically is someone who always kind of has like these negative feelings, like low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, just like feel like they're never good enough. They kind of want everyone to like them. And so this is actually one of the big five personality traits. There were four other ones that were discussed, but this is one of the big five personality traits that Kieran Horney had suggested. So, neuroticism, oddly enough, is considered a relatively mild mental illness. Um, and it doesn't seem that it's caused by any organic disease, so it's like nothing you can like catch or like something like that. But like I stated before, it's like someone who has negative feelings all the time. So typically, a lot of the symptoms are going to be involving stress, so like anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, feelings of a guilty conscience all the time, things like that, and even an obsessive compulsive disorder. Even though this is considered a mental illness, most of the persons who are dealing with this, they don't have a radical loss of touch with reality, so they still live in the real world, so to say. And so, as you guys all know, earlier this semester, we did read a chapter about Karen Horney and her theory of neurotic needs. This definitely ties into neuroticism because um, of the feeling that people need constant approval for someone or constant feelings of depression and guilt tends to kind of mold who we are as a person. So there's some different categories and subcategories that she came up with. I'm not going to go over all of them, but just that the top three typically, the neurotic needs that most people have either move you towards others, away from others, or against people, and each one has different trends. So, for example, someone with a neurotic need to move towards someone, they'll do a lot of things to try to gain approval from a lot of people. Um, maybe change the way that they think or change the way that they see something or agree with someone, even when deep down they might not really agree with them, just for that approval. So there's a lot of different things that kind of tie in that leads to how people behave in a public setting. So we have neurosis, and neuroticism. So started with neurosis is basically a term. It was created back in like the 18th century. A lot of psychologists and psychiatrists used it to describe a range of psychological disorders that didn't have a physical cause. And then we have neurosis, which is a mental disorder that actually involves obsessive behavior thinking and anxiety. So a lot of like OCD kind of thing, and then anxiety and depression as well. Um, it's still used, it's just not used as often just because the term is tends to be a little outdated, so not a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists use it. And then there's neuroticism, which we've already talked about, which basically it's more of an adjective. It's a descriptive word. It's a personality trait. So it describes a person's personality. So, although a lot of times these three terms are used interchangeably, they do have different definitions. They are not all the same thing.